Today, we are cracking open the official rulebook that defines who is and who isn't an Indian citizen. We're talking about the Citizenship Act of 1955. We're going to go straight to the source to understand exactly how it works, how it's changed, and why it all matters. So, here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down some foundational definitions. Then, we'll walk through the main ways you can gain citizenship, whether it's by birth, your family tree, or through an application. We'll also look at some special cases, and then flip the coin to see the 3 specific ways citizenship can actually be lost. All right, first things first. Before we can really get into the nitty-gritty of the rules, we have to get on the same page with the language of the law. Let's look at a couple of key definitions that are basically the building blocks for everything else we're going to talk about. The first term is a bit of a historical time traveler, undivided India. Now, this doesn't mean the map of India you see today. It specifically refers to the territory of India before the 1947 partition. The law actually points back to an even older document, the Government of India Act of 1935, to define this. Okay, next up is a term that carries a ton of legal weight: illegal migrant. The Act is super clear about this in Section 2. It's any foreigner who either enters the country without the right papers, like a visa or passport, or someone who stays longer than they're allowed to. You'll want to keep this definition in your back pocket, because as we're about to see, this status can be a major roadblock to ever getting citizenship. So now that we've got the basics down, let's explore the very first path to citizenship through birth and family lineage. For a whole lot of people, this is where their citizenship story starts. You know, when it comes to being a citizen just by being born in India, which is all covered in Section 3, the single most important question you have to ask is, when were you born? The rules on this have actually changed pretty dramatically over the years. This timeline really shows you how the rules have gotten stricter and stricter. I mean, from 1950 all the way to mid-1987, it was as simple as it gets. If you were born on Indian soil, you were a citizen. That's it. But from 1987 on, a new rule kicked in. You had to be born in India, and at least one of your parents had to be a citizen. And then, after late 2004, the rules got even more specific. You had to be born in India to 2 Indian parents, or have one parent who's a citizen and another who isn't an illegal migrant. So what about people born outside of India? Well, that's where Section 4, citizenship by descent, comes into play. And the huge turning point here was December 10th, 1992. Before that date, citizenship could only be passed down from an Indian father. But after 1992, the law became gender neutral, which is a big deal. It meant either an Indian mother or father could pass on their citizenship. The key things you have to do: you must register the birth at an Indian consulate, and you have to declare that the child doesn't hold a passport from another country. Okay, but what if you weren't born into citizenship? Well, the next path is to apply for it. And the Act gives you 2 very different ways to do this, something called registration and something called naturalization. Let's put these 2 side by side. Think of registration, under Section 5, as the pathway for people who already have some kind of connection to India. Maybe they're of Indian origin or they're married to an Indian citizen. For this, you generally need to have lived in India for 7 years. Naturalization, under Section 6, is for other foreigners, and here the bar is set quite a bit higher. You're looking at a much longer residency requirement. You need to have lived in India for 11 of the past 14 years, and that last year has to be totally uninterrupted. But hey, naturalization isn't just a waiting game. The Act actually lays out a whole checklist of qualifications. You have to be of good character, you need to have a decent grasp of an official Indian language, and you must intend to make India your permanent home. You even seal the deal with a formal oath of allegiance. And there's one more interesting rule: your home country can't be one that prevents Indians from becoming citizens there. So, beyond these normal routes, the Act has been tweaked over the years to handle some very specific, unique situations. These changes really reflect some major historical and political moments. These special cases show how the law can adapt. Take Section 7, for example. It covers what happens if a new piece of land becomes part of India. Then you have Section 6A, which is a direct result of the Assam Accord. It created a special legal path for people of Indian origin who came to Assam from Bangladesh before a specific cutoff date in 1971. And more recently, Section 6B was added in 2019. It created a pathway for specific communities from 3 neighboring countries who entered India before 2015. So we've talked a lot about how you can gain citizenship, but what about losing it? Well, the Act is incredibly clear about this too. It lays out 3 distinct ways that a person's Indian citizenship can come to an end. Let's break these 3 down. First, you have renunciation under Section 8. This is totally voluntary. An adult citizen can just formally say, I'm giving up my citizenship. Second is termination in Section 9. This one is automatic. The second you voluntarily become a citizen of another country, your Indian citizenship just ends. And finally, there's deprivation under Section 10. This is compulsory. This is when the government actively revokes your citizenship for serious stuff, like getting it through fraud or being disloyal to the country. And that point about termination is so important because it gets at a core principle of Indian law. There is no dual citizenship. The moment you willingly take on another country's passport, your Indian citizenship is automatically gone, period. Phew, okay, that was a deep dive into the Citizenship Act. So let's just pull back for a second and recap the main takeaways from all of this. So we've seen the 4 main doors to get in: birth, descent, registration, and naturalization. We've also tracked how the rules for that first door, birthright citizenship, have gotten a lot narrower over time. And we've seen how the law can not only grant citizenship, but also take it away in 3 very specific ways. It's a complex system for sure, but it is very clearly structured. And all of this brings us to one final, much bigger question. The Citizenship Act is obviously not some dusty old document stuck in 1955. It's a living law that's been reshaped by history again and again. So when you look at all these changes, across almost 70 years, it really makes you think, what does this constant evolution tell us about our changing idea of who belongs and what it truly means to be Indian?